All right, so this is a follow-up to my previous video about getting started with dotnet Aspire. And in the previous demo or video, you might have noticed that we had an instance of SQL Server and we spun it up in our local Docker instance. But what if you have an existing instance of SQL Server, or really, an existing instance of anything that you want to use with your application? Well, it's pretty easy to take, what we've created before, where we had this connection or the string here where we, adding SQL Server, give it the name SQL, and adding a database called Aspire App Demo. And what that does there is, that spins, as I mentioned before, it spins up an instance in Docker of SQL Server, creates a database in it, and calls that database Aspire App Demo. And then our API project, we had that set up where, ensures that the database was created and puts the table in there and whatnot. But let's say we have an existing instance of SQL Server. So what we need to do is go into our app settings. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add our connection string. I've already put that in here. So we've got a connection string. We'll call it Aspire App Demo. And we're creating a connection to an existing instance of SQL Server. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that name for our Aspire App Demo. We're going to go into our program.cs. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to comment out our Docker creating instance of it. And instead what we're going to do is going to do var SQL equals builder.add connection string. And in that connection string, we're going to put the name of the connection string from our app settings.json. And that is the only change that we need to make here in our app host. So instead of, this reference to the SQL variable, instead of that passing in a reference to our spun up containerized version, we're instead going to pass the connection string to the existing SQL database that we have, in this particular case, in our local machine. So let's go over here to our API project. And obviously you look here, there's nothing that we need to do with our app settings here in our API project. That stays out of there. And in our program.cs, we've got this reference that we had added in the last in the demo, where we've got a reference to our containerized version. Well, we're passing in that same reference name, Aspire App Demo, instead of that being the name of the database. That's the name of the connection string. And we don't have to make any changes whatsoever into our API project, because it's it's still using this context. It still was turning this into a connection information. In this case, instead of a connection to our Docker instance, it's a connection to our existing SQL Server instance. So if we go down here, we had this one thing here where we were verifying that the application or that the database existed. You could still leave that in there. One of the things to remember, with this is this db.ensure created. If the database doesn't already exist, it'll create the database and put the tables in it. If that database already exists, it doesn't do anything. So you don't need to make any changes here. So we'll go ahead and run that application. We'll give that a minute to spin up here. Now, if you recall from the previous video, we had a couple of other resources that were referenced here to our Docker containerized version of SQL Server and the database that was in that. Obviously, because we're just passing the connection string now, those no longer exist in our list of resources. Now, I believe in version 9 of Aspire, if I remember what I read correctly, you're going to be able to add those references to those external application instances. So that you can kind of monitor them all and connect to them here in your dashboard. But it's not something that you can do currently with this version. So we'll go in here to our API project, just so you can see it's pulling the demo data here, and go to demo data. And you can see that it's pulling the data from there. Now what we can do here is just go over here and look at our SQL instance. You can see here in my local SQL instance, here's my database, here's the table that's already been created, and just pull up the data here, and you can see there's those 2 rows of data that were pulled in. Now, if I were to change this, to say, let's see here, edit, And we'll just change that to demo item 3. Oops. Just change some demo data there. And then we refresh that data. And I didn't actually update that row there. So I need to tab out of that. Now if I refresh that now, there we go. Now it's changed. So we've got, demo item 3 and hello. So there are, you can see it's very simple, very easy to change that to point to an existing instance and to access that information. And again, the fantastic part of Aspire is keeping that configuration or that connection string in one place and then just passing references to that one place all over your application. So, if I had multiple API projects and I need to pass that connection string to all of them, I no longer have to maintain it in each of the individual projects. I put it in one place, and Aspire handles passing that around to all the other application parts of your project that need that. So again, highlighting the fantastic parts of Aspire, and it's very simple to get going. Thank you.